Hi guys, welcome to or welcome back to With Her Nose Stuck in a Book. My name is Nikki. Today we are going to be talking about classic books that are ideal to read around Valentine's Day. I am hoping to do a video later on in the week about more contemporary books that are ideal to read around Valentine's Day, but to be honest, I don't read a lot of romance. So the ones that I have read tend to be the ones that everyone were talking about on like Book Talk or Bookstagram and stuff. So the ones I've read are probably the ones that everyone's been talking about before. So as I say, I've not got like a wide pool to choose recommendations from, because it's not a genre that I pick up very often. So I thought I'd start with classic books that have got like a kind of element of romance or love story in them, and we'll see how we get on. But yeah, that's what we'll be doing today. So the first one that I've got here probably comes as no surprise. It's Jane Austen. I've got Pride and Prejudice here, but really could put all of Jane Austen's novels on here because they all kind of centre around a romance plot. But I put Pride and Prejudice on here because I feel like this must be the original enemies to lovers trope romance book. So obviously it is about Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth Bennet, and when they first meet they do not like each other at all, and he's quite proud and has a lot of pride, and she's prejudiced, and it's about this kind of verbal like back and forth between them, like kind of the like verbal sparring almost, back and forth, and yeah, and I think it must be the OG enemies to lovers. Let me know if you know of a book that was out before Pride and Prejudice that has that trope. There might be one, I don't know, but I feel like this must be the OG. And yeah, like I think everyone kind of knows the story. It was made very, very famous by the adaptation with Colin Firth in it, and then again with the Keira Knightley version in 2000. I want to say 2015, maybe, can't remember. 2005 actually. So yeah, lots of adaptations, and then lots of like adaptations that are like kind of just loosely based on it, like Bridget Jones and stuff like that. Even has its own zombie movie. But yeah, so that's my first recommendation. But as I say, you could swap this out with any. I do have one more Austen book on here, but I didn't want to put all of them in because then it would just be a list of Jane Austen books. But yeah, you could really read any of her books for the kind of Valentine's Day season. Next up, I have a more kind of gothic romance story. So this is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. And again, a very well known story. This is more about, like, it's more of a gothic setting, and it's about like the romance between Jane and Rochester. Like it's quite passionate at times. Rochester is this kind of brooding, Byronic anti-hero, and Jane starts off at the start of the book. She is an orphan, and she's living with her aunt and her cousins, and they treat her terribly, and she then goes to a sort of boarding school for orphans, and it's horrible there as well. They don't feed the girls properly, they don't clothe them properly. The punishments are really severe and harsh. The guy that owns it is just horrible. And she spends a few years there, and then when she's finished at school, she teaches there for a couple of years, and she then applies to be a governess at Rochester's manor house. She goes there and she meets Rochester, and they kind of fall in love, but there is a bit of a hiccup in that plan, and I won't say what that is in case there is anyone out there who hasn't read the story yet, because if you haven't read it, you really should go in blind and not look into what the kind of where that story goes. But yeah, it's really good. I read it again last year, and it really, even though I knew what was coming, I was still like turning the pages like, oh my god, like it's so tense. And it really reads, it doesn't read like it was written in the 1800s. It's quite modern, and it's ahead of its time in terms of the way it treats women, the way Jane talks about how women should be treated and women's rights, and just how Jane conducts herself throughout the whole book, where she's happy to, like, she's like, I won't put up with your nonsense, even before they're romantically involved. Like, she tells him, like, yeah, I'm working for you, but like you can't pay me enough to just take crap off you, basically. Like, I won't let you treat me like an idiot type thing. So like, she's very much her own person and knows herself really well, and what her morals are, and yeah, so it's about their romance, and the kind of hiccups along the way, and it's got the very famous line at the end, but I won't say that because, again, if you haven't read it, you really should just go in blind. Don't look anything up about it, just read it, because you will find yourself just turning the page to find out what's going on and then what happens, because it's split into kind of 3 sections, and each section has this kind of very dramatic climax at the end of it, so you're jumping right on to the next section to find out what's going on. But yeah, one of my favourite classics. So Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Next up, I have another Bronte book. This one is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, and before anyone comes at me saying that this is not a romance, I know, like, I get it, right? Obviously, Wuthering Heights is everywhere at the moment because the film comes out in cinemas on Friday, and there's been a lot of controversy around the casting of the film, like, because Jacob Elordi is playing Heathcliff, and he's a white guy, and the book kind of makes it very clear that it doesn't tell you where Heathcliff's from. That's kind of the point. You're not meant to know where he's from, but there's parts where it says he's dark skinned, and Nellie says, like, I think there's literally a sentence where she says, like, that he's black. So obviously there's a lot of people up in arms about the casting, especially because the guy that's playing Edgar isn't white, like, and he's, like, literally described in the book as being, like, blonde and blue-eyed and as white as you could basically get. So yeah, the casting is a bit strange, but you know what, I'm going to watch it, I'm going to give it a go. I didn't know the previous adaptations of Wuthering Heights, because I've never watched an adaptation of Wuthering Heights, kind of miss out the second half of the book, all the stuff about the younger generation. So I can see why people who have only watched the films may think that this is a romance about Kathleen Heathcliff, and it's the greatest romance ever told, which is kind of tagline of the movie. But it's yes, it is about romance. But it's about this kind of dark, wild, intense, obsessive, like passionate love for that Kathy and Heathcliff have for each other, and how that can be really kind of self-destructive, and it can destroy everyone around you. So it's definitely not a kind of romance that you want to aspire to, because it's quite toxic. It's not quite toxic, it's very toxic. This book has a lot of cruelty in it. It's nobody in this book is really a likable person. Like, everybody is kind of horrible. But you have this story about Catherine and Heathcliff's kind of obsessive, forbidden love, and obviously there's a misunderstanding, and Heathcliff goes away and runs away, and in that meantime, Catherine marries Edgar, who is very civilized, very like proper, and then Heathcliff comes back, and he's like, well, I'm just going to get revenge on everyone. I'm just going to burn this whole thing to the ground. And it's about how he just basically spends his whole time getting revenge on everyone. Then there's kind of like generational trauma and all that kind of thing in here. So don't go into this thinking you're getting this happily ever after love story, because that is really not what this is. But would I still recommend it? 1,000,000%, because it's brilliant. Like, it's my favourite, I think. Yeah, I'm going back and forth between this and Jane Eyre at the moment, and then sometimes I think, well, wait, what about Frankenstein? So I don't know. My favourite classic, I think this probably is my favourite classic, but it can be interchangeable depending on what I'm reading at the time. But yeah, so you can probably read this in the winter as well. Like, it's very like autumnal, like there's lots of like storms and things, so you could read it kind of like late autumn or winter time, and it would be just as good. But if you want to read it around Valentine's Day, then that is also a choice. And obviously right now, the film comes out the day before Valentine's, so it's an ideal time. Like, if you go on Bookstagram or Book Talk or Booktube, literally everyone is reading this book right now, and there's a lot of different opinions on it. I think most people that read a lot appreciate the writing, because the writing is like out of this world. But I think like some people have issues with the kind of type of the romance story element between Catherine and Heathcliff, and how like he's like a violent guy. And like I say, he's just hell bent on revenge. So yeah, it is causing a lot of debate at the moment, and I think when people go and see the film at the weekend, there'll probably be a whole lot more debate, because, as I say, opinions are divided on the casting and all the choices for the film. I actually heard the other day, I saw an interview where the director was saying she was kind of defending her choice. Like, she's basically made the character, like, so Hindley isn't in this adaptation. Instead, she's kind of made Hindley's character and Mr. Earnshaw's character, who's the dad, like just one character, which is interesting because they're very different. Like, Mr. Earnshaw loves Heathcliff, treats him like a son, like fully accepts him as part of the family, and Hindley is the complete opposite of that. So it'll be interesting to see how that character is merged into one character and what they do with that. So that is one thing I'm interested to see. Next up, I have another Jane Austen. As I say, I've only put 2 on here, but this one's Persuasion, and I chose this one because this one's a bit of a different one, because it's more about second chances at love. So it's about a couple, Anne, Elliot, and Frederick, um, Frederick Wentworth, and Anne and Frederick are a young couple who are engaged, but then stuff happens, life gets in the way, and the engagement is broken off. And it's about how they come back together years later and get this kind of second chance at love. Like, they meet again years later and they realise the spark's still there, and it's a much more mature work, I think. It's a bit more melancholic, and yeah, so it's a bit slightly different from like Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility and stuff, but yeah, I would recommend this one as well. I've just noticed on the back here that Virginia Woolf's recommending it, and she says, in Persuasion, Jane Austen is beginning to discover that the world is larger, more mysterious, and more romantic than she had supposed. So yeah, but yeah, thoroughly recommend Jane Austen for this time of year. Next up, I have The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. This one is a shorter work. It's about 150 pages long, maybe, and it's about Jay Gatsby, and basically he is this wealthy, like, party guy in the 1920s and the kind of jazz era, the kind of roaring 20s in New York, and he is in love with Daisy Buchanan, and he is basically obsessed with this girl, and his like love for her basically drives everything that he does, and yeah, this one's more about like how love can be like beautiful and tragic at the same time, but lots of obscene wealth and privilege and decadence and stuff in this and its characters. Again, there's an adaptation with Leonardo DiCaprio that you could watch, but yeah, nice little short one, and again a kind of different take on romance. Next up, I have Love in the Time of Cholera. Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Obviously, I put 100 Years of Solitude on my TBR this month because I wanted to read that, but I do want to reread this at some point as well, because it's been a long time. I think I was in school when I read it, and it's about two people who are young and they're in love, and it's like this kind of young love that like he goes away and they write letters to each other constantly, and the dad's not really into it, but she's like, no, I love him, and then all of a sudden she kind of changes her mind, and she's like, no, actually I'm not in love with you, I don't really know who you are at all, like we don't actually really know each other, like breaking it off, and she goes and marries someone else, and what's his name, I think is Fernando, no, Florentino, basically just waits for her for like 50 years, and he just stays like he's kind of leading a double life. Like he's going out and he's going off and he's doing his own thing and he's having affairs and stuff like that. Well, not affairs because they're not together, but like he's seeing people, but he's also like just waiting for this woman to come back to him, and like trying to make sure that she never finds out about any of this stuff that he's getting up to. But it kind of shows it's about love being messy and imperfect. It's a kind of realistic portrayal of love. And yeah, just how hanging on in there and biding your time can sometimes pay off. But yeah, as I say, it's been a long time since I've read it, so I'm trying like to kind of remember like the plot because it has been a while, but I would give it another go. So yeah, I don't think I'll get to that this year, but it's maybe one to put on the list for next February. After that, I have Rebecca, which is another in the same vein as Jane Eyre. It's gothic. This one was written in the 1930s or 40s, I can't remember. It's by Daphne du Maurier, and this one is about a young lady's maid who is with her employer in Monte Carlo, and she meets Maxime de Winter, and he sweeps her off her feet and they get married. And then she goes to Manderley, his big manor house, to live. And she kind of quickly realises that she doesn't actually really know much about this guy. And all the servants there seem to still be completely obsessed with his previous wife who passed away, Rebecca. And they all still talk about this Rebecca as Mrs. de Winter and stuff, even though she is the new Mrs. de Winter, and they just all seem to be obsessed with her, and Maxime doesn't ever talk about her, and she's just like inside her own head so much that she's like, well, he must still love her, and I'm never going to live up to this woman, and she just gets so inside her own head. And then there's another, like, this is another book with a brilliant twist, so again I won't say too much more, but again, reads really well, reads like a modern thriller, and I would highly recommend it. So that is Rebecca. Again, a recent adaptation out if you would want to watch it instead of reading it, or watch it after you've read it or alongside it. But yeah, Rebecca is a really good, again, it's a classic that reads like quite a modern book, and as I say, you'll just be turning the pages to find out what's going on in the house and what is this all about. Next up, this one's a bit of an unusual one, because it might not automatically be thought of when it comes to romance, and it's The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. And primarily this is a story, like an adventure story. It's a revenge plot, but it does also explore lost love. There's betrayal in there, and you've obviously got Dante's, like, he's obviously wronged, and it's about him getting his revenge, but it's also about him getting redemption through love. So one that you wouldn't necessarily pick up thinking, I'm going to read this for the romance plot, but there is like a love story in there, but it is very, very long. It's about 1,000 pages, this version, but it does read like really quickly. I've seen a few people reading it right now on like Bookstagram and stuff, and they're just like, you just like, it doesn't feel like 1,000 pages because you just read it so quickly because the plot is that good. So don't let the size of it put you off, because it is like a really quickly, it won't feel like 1,000 pages. And Alexander Dumas really good for that, because the Three Musketeers is very similar. Like, it's quite a large book, but you're just like, look, because it is just so fast paced and you just want to keep going and finding out what happens. So Alexander Dumas is a really good writer for, like, he writes like huge books, but when you're reading them, they don't feel like they're actually almost like you don't want them to end, like you wish there was more. But yeah, so that is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas, if you want something a little bit different. Next up, I have another huge book. These classic writers just loved writing huge doorstoppers of books. But yeah, this one is Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell, and this is obviously set in the Civil War era of American history, and it's this kind of epic tale of love and war and survival. Its main characters are obviously Scarlett O'Hara and Rhett Butler, and you've kind of got the background of the war and like trying to survive in that kind of really turbulent time period. But then this love story, and again, it's very much, it's kind of similar to kind of Wuthering Heights, Jane Eyre type vibes, where like she's very like Catherine, Scarlett O'Hara, and Rhett Butler is a bit like Heathcliff, or Rochester. He's like quite arrogant, and I believe I'm basing this, I've not actually read it yet. If you've seen my previous video, it's on my list to read this year, and I think I'm going to try and read it next month, and put it on my March TBR, because I really want to read it. But I have seen the movie before, so I know the kind of the plot, although it was a while ago that I watched the movie, and the movie in itself is about 4 hours long. Like, it was so long, I believe, that like when they showed it in theatres, there had to be an interval in the middle to let people like go out and use the bathroom, get like whatever. But yeah, so the book in itself is 1,050 pages. But the movie as well, if you're thinking, oh, I'll just watch the movie, because that's also about 4 hours long. So yeah, I remember we had it in DVD when I watched it. Like, so it was years ago I watched it, and it was like when it was like so long that you had to like take the DVD out halfway through and flip it the other way around and put it back in the DVD player. But yeah, so that is Gone with the Wind, and that is the love story of Scarlett O'Hara and Rhett Butler, and that has a very famous line in it of, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. I remember that line, and there's a line that's like something like, tomorrow is another day. I remember that from the movie. So yeah, I'm interested to read the book and find out what it's all about. Obviously, it does kind of glamorize the Civil War a bit. Well, not a bit, like a lot, I think. But yeah, I'm interested to read it for myself and see what it's all about. But yeah, so hopefully I get that done next month. Next up is another one that I haven't read yet, and I actually just picked this up recently, and it is The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton. And when I picked this up, I didn't really know anything about it. I just saw it in TK Maxx, and it was a couple of pounds, and I was like, there's a classic that I haven't read yet, cheap, I'm picking it up. So this, from what I gather, is a story about a young couple who are quite high up in society, and they get married, they have this big wedding, and then the bride's cousin, who's quite beautiful and alluring and captivating, she kind of threatens their happiness when she catches the eye of the groom, the new groom. So yeah, that's really all I know about it. It's set in New York in the 19th century, so it might go quite well alongside your kind of Great Gatsby. If you're reading Great Gatsby, this might be a good one to read alongside it. But yeah, so the cousin has already left. She's already caused a scandal by leaving her marriage, and then she kind of catches the eye of this new groom, and yeah, so it's about that. So again, it doesn't sound like it's a happy ending, but we'll see. So that's The Age of Innocence. The next two aren't really happy ending love stories either, but they are about romance and love and stuff. But like, maybe with these two, I don't like trigger warnings really, because I'd rather not know about the plot, but I do get that some people do like them and do need them for certain topics. So with these two next books, it's hard because you might want to check the trigger warnings, but checking the trigger warnings is probably going to give away a kind of major point of the plot. So obviously you yourself balance that and decide what you want to do, but I do know that people tend to maybe say, look, just check the trigger warnings. Obviously they're both quite well-known stories, so you might already know what happens in these plots. But the first one that I've got is Anna Karenina, and this is, again, massive book. This one's about 800 pages, this copy, and it is, again, this big epic story of kind of doomed love and self-destruction, like what happens when someone presses the self-destruct button. Anna is, again, very high up in Russian society, and she is in this unhappy marriage. It's a marriage of convenience. Her husband is very much like not robotic with her, but he's got his routine and that's what they do. And there's no romance there's no spontaneity. He's very much all about his image, and she's restless. She's described as very beautiful and very worldly, but she basically embarks on an affair, and it's about how, like, her kind of fall, like fallen woman. It's a very like fallen woman arc, and it's basically about how the fallout of this affair, and her kind of fall from grace, and it's kind of like you get Anna's story alongside another love story between Kitty and Levin, and that's kind of very the opposite of what Anna's story is. So you've got that kind of juxtaposition all through the book between the two different relationships. But yeah, this I think everyone should read Anna Karenina, because it's probably one of the best novels ever written. But yeah, definitely if you're if you feel that you're sensitive to certain issues, check a trigger warning first. But I would really recommend this one. But again, it doesn't have, like, it's not happy ever after. But I mean, lots of love stories aren't happily ever after in real life, so that in novels reflect real life. So if every story had a happy ending, then it would be quite boring, I suppose. But yeah, so next I have Madame Bovary by Gustave Flaubert. I read this last year for the first time, and again, fairly similar in at points with Anna Karenina. Emma is the Madame Bovary of the title, and she marries Charles. And when Emma was growing up, she just like consumed loads and loads and loads and loads of romance stories. So when she gets married, she's expecting this kind of passionate, like, all-consuming love that she's read about in all these books. And unfortunately for her, Charles is he's just like a kind of dull country doctor. Like, he's a doctor, but like her life kind of bores her. Like, he bores her. Like, he's not exciting. He's quite content with their little life, and you feel sorry for Charles all through it, because he's really oblivious to the fact that Emma is insanely unhappy. Like, he just loves her so much, and he dotes on her, and he has no idea that she feels this way. So you do feel quite sorry for him, like, throughout the book. But again, you also feel quite frustrated sometimes. And Emma herself can be quite frustrating, because you're like, oh, why are you doing that? Like, why? Yeah, so Charles is quite happy and content, and Emma is she's just bored with her life. Her marriage is not what she expected it to be. She's got obviously this very idealized version of romance and marriage and stuff in her head, and it just doesn't live up to that. So she embarks on a couple of different affairs, and we see what happens as a result of that. And again, it kind of all ends up in disaster and tragedy. This book scandalized readers when it was published. It was published in, I think it was the 1850s, 1857. And like, there was a huge scandal. I think Gustave Flaubert had to like defend it. I don't know if it went to court, like some, you know how some trials, there's been trials for like obscenity and stuff in books over the years. But yeah, he basically had to like defend this book. It was scandalized people, and I believe it was banned because obviously it was about a woman who has an affair, blatantly has an affair, really. And yeah, it was scandalous at the time. As I say, I read it for the first time last March. I read it, and I really enjoyed it. It's not one I would have ever thought to pick up, but I like I say, I really enjoyed it. There are a couple of chapters in it where like Flaubert is just describing the village and this village fair that's happening. It's so detailed, like, because Flaubert was the kind of pioneer of realism, so like realistic writing, where we're just like, the book is basically just like you opening, like, just looking into everyday life of people. So there are bits that are talking about certain things, and they're just super detailed. But he is basically the pioneer of that style of writing. So he's kind of like the novels that we read today, like we're so used to that style of writing now that we don't even think about it. But this was like unseen before when he published this. So there you can read it for that kind of like historical aspect of it in terms of like the history of literature. It was really a groundbreaking book at the time, as well as being like scandalous. But yeah, there are a couple of chapters where you like I thought it kind of didn't drag. It was just like you're kind of like get back to the story. Like it like this like I don't need like a 10-page description of this village fair event thing. But other than that, I like can't really remember anything else about it that I didn't like. The story's good. As I say, you'll feel sorry for the husband at points, but you'll feel frustrated at him. Sometimes you just want to shake Anna and be like, "What are you doing, girl?" But overall, I really enjoyed it. But again, check the trigger warnings and don't go in it looking for a happy ever after. But yeah, so that is my last book. So there's 12 books there that you could read around Valentine's Day. Not all of them, as I say, are happy endings, but yeah. So depending on what you're looking for, obviously, there's some in there that are happily ever afters, and some that are not so much, and some that are just relationships you should not aspire to at all. But you can use them as kind of warnings of what not to do in love and in relationships. But hopefully there is something there that you would like. If you have read any of them, please do let me know. I'm always interested to find out what like what you found, like what you thought of the books that I've read. And I'm always happy to discuss what I've read with people. But yeah, that is the list of books for today. And I will see you next time. And if I don't manage to make another video before, then have a lovely Valentine's Day. See you later.